Hello, I'm Brendan Donnelly. I'm the Deputy Chair of the REJOIN EU party, and this evening I'm going to be putting some questions to the leader of the REJOIN EU party, Richard Hewison, questions that have been put to us on the website. The first one, from Jim, among others: why will voting for the REJOIN EU party make rejoining more likely?
Well, I think that's a very important point to address because, let's be frank, what is not going to happen is us get 325 seats in Parliament and form a government to rejoin. That is not how I see us influencing the rejoin debate. But what we do make sure happens is we put pressure on the bigger parties to bring rejoining the EU into their agenda, into their discussion. And I think sometimes when we attend things like hustings events, we can see the annoyance on the face of some of our other politicians as they're forced to actually address some of these issues that they'd rather not talk about. And I think this is true for any single issue party. If you are a single issue party in a debate, then you force that issue onto the agenda. And I do not think there is a single issue that is most prevalent to the UK today, apart from rejoining the EU. And of course, it's one of those issues which virtually every one of the big debates that comes up, rejoining the EU is relevant to. It's relevant to the food costs that we see at the moment. It's relevant to the discussion over immigration. It's relevant to the discussion about democracy and standards in Parliament. All of this boils down to our relationship with the EU. So that's how I think we will influence the debate.
Very interesting that during the political activity of UKIP over the past 15 years, leading up to the referendum, they always gave a very similar answer when they were asked about transport or education. What they said with some plausibility was this is something that depends on our membership or is influenced by our membership of the European Union. So that's a very intellectually coherent position, it seems to me. I think the opinion polls show that more and more people are coming to see the disadvantages of Brexit. But presumably, if we're to win the argument about rejoining, there must be benefits from rejoining that we put to the electorate. What are the benefits that you think will have most resonance with the electorate?
Oh, I'm glad you phrased that way, because when I thought you were going to say what benefits could we get, I was thinking we've only got 15 minutes. We could go on for hours in terms of that. In terms of what's likely to resonate most with the electorate, if I'm honest, I think once people make the link to food prices and our access to the single market, that is going to be one of the things that most chimes with most people these days. For me, it's probably more my concern about where the planet is going in terms of environmental strategy. We've basically taken ourselves out of the game in terms of trying to do something to help the world resolve the issues over climate change. And I believe that by rejoining the EU, we will once again be able to have our voice at the top table of international affairs, starting to make arguments for prioritizing what I think is one of the most vital issues we've got. But I have to say, I think it's probably cost of living for most people at the moment and access to the food that's right on our doorstep. And let's not forget, the next election is going to be after October this year, theoretically, when we're going to be looking to see yet more checks coming into place on goods and services flowing into the UK. And we've no idea what extra chaos that's going to bring to the food supply situation.
There's some interest on the website about how many candidates we're thinking of standing in the next election and what the sort of criteria might be of the numbers. What decisions have been taken on that, or is it still fluid?
It is certainly something that we are talking about a lot within our party at the moment. And probably worth putting it in context. When we started on the basis that we were basically a label that anyone who in their local constituency wanted to make sure the issue of rejoining the EU was on the agenda could actually stand and make sure that that came up in their election. And of course, we know that potentially the more marginal constituencies, this would be something that would have a real impact on political thought. Since that time, I think more and more people are becoming concerned as to what exactly the state of the opinion polls are going to be at the time of the next election. Because let's be honest, we've gone from a hung parliament to looking like a Labour majority of several hundred to now looking at a Labour majority of perhaps about 20-25, depending on what polls you look at. And what I can say to people is we will try not to stand in the way of anyone who wants to put themselves forward to keep this debate going, which we need to make sure happens at the next election. But at the same time, we're we do not want to try and do anything to ensure that the Conservatives get a chance of staying in office. So that's the sort of juggling act that we've got at the moment. And as yet, we've not come out with a full policy position, but watch this space, I would say, on that.
One of our YouTube viewers says that short of a nuclear holocaust, we're certainly going to rejoin the European Union one day. What do you think the timeline is?
The context is rather chilling, that first sentence.
Yes.
And I think it is something that's a legitimate worry to a lot of us at the moment. Obviously, with the situation in Russia, we have a desperate leader coming to the end of his time, both politically and, if rumours are to be true, believed health-wise as well, who really doesn't seem to care much about the life of, well, certainly the life of his own country people, were the rest of us on the planet as well. So, yes, I think there is. We are closer to nuclear conflict than we have been since the 1980s, I think, at the moment. Let's hope that it doesn't end up that way. And let's focus on the positive. I do agree with the idea that we are going to eventually have to rejoin the EU. In terms of the timescale and the steps, I think we have to reach a position where the momentum behind it becomes inevitable. So if the next government, when elected, was to, say, for example, do a poll of the nation a few months after election and say, what direction do you want us to go in? Do you want to rejoin? Do you want to stay out? And we vote overwhelmingly to rejoin, which I think we would, then that gives an unstoppable momentum. And even if we take the Liberal Democrats, for example, the Liberal Democrats have outlined a path, but a very, very long path back to rejoining the EU, basically doing it step by step, bridge by bridge, potentially taking 5 to 10 years. I think with an expression of public will, the momentum behind that timescale will become much more rapid. And I think it's fair to say, Brendan, you and I have discussed this before in terms of the EU's open offer of countries after leaving the EU having a vote to say whether or not they agree with it. I hope you don't mind me saying, I think you're a bit sceptical of that idea. I would like to explore it a bit fuller as a route. But let's be frank, the next government needs to take the debate by the scruff of the neck, and it needs to put it to the people as quickly as possible.
Well, thank you very much for the answers. In The Sopranos, they say that being a good boss is giving the right answers to impossible questions, and then whacking anyone who disagrees with you. On that basis, we're very glad that you're our leader and answering these questions. Thanks very much, Richard.
Thanks, Brendan. Look forward to doing this again sometime very soon. Thank you.
Good.
Bye-bye.
This is a story that has been ignored by the media, and we need change. Embark on a majestic journey with the REJOIN EU party and support our cause on Patreon. Be part of the movement.
Vote REJOIN EU. Join the EU vision.